Hello, my name is David Bryan, and this is Curiosity Invited, a podcast inspired by endless curiosity. Tune in for an open-minded conversation about interesting and important things. Welcome to Curiosity Invited. My name is David Bryan, and today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Nadya Rousseau, who, Truth in Advertising, I know Nadya from something we worked on together. She was the most fun part of the project.
I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Absolutely true, because you remember that project.
Oh yeah.
So, and Nadya is one of those people who didn't send me a bio. So I'm
shoot,
gonna
I'm
actually.
so sorry. My
No,
bad.
don't be silly. Don't be silly. I know, because I could have just, read it from you from LinkedIn, but it's so much better when somebody. So let me ask you.
Curiosity.
Say a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure thing. Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you about, who knows, we'll see. Curiosity Invited.
Indeed.
So my name is Nadya. I'm the founder and CEO of Alter New Media, which is a full service, purpose forward marketing and PR agency.
Okay, slow down. Wait a second. Alt, say again, because that was too fast. Alt New
Was
Media.
it? I don't know.
No. I'm not saying don't start
in a southern accent. Just
no,
so
I want people to be able to know what the name of it is.
Alter New Media.
Good.
ALTER space new space media LLC.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, good.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I'm founder and CEO of Alter New Media, and we're a full service marketing and PR agency. We support mission-driven companies with achieving their business goals while also making a difference in the world. We do that mostly through our purposeful partnerships, which basically works between partnering nonprofits with for-profits. Oftentimes, this manifests as either a short-term or a long-term campaign. Before I got into marketing and advertising, I was in the entertainment industry as a professional actor and model for a number of years. Then I pivoted to freelance journalism, which made way for digital production, which made way for what I'm doing now. And I'm not going to give away the whole thing, of the agency, because we'll probably poke around a little bit.
So wait a second. That's a really quite a pivot, right? So you started out in acting for was it stage, TV, movies? What?
It was everything. It was a mix of, theater. I mean, obviously when I was a kid, I did a lot of theater. Like, I'm not going to be doing TV in Hagerstown, Maryland, like, unless I was, going to be on TV for some local hamburger joint or something. So I did theater as a kid, and then I moved to LA at 19 for a modeling and acting contract, and I was, in that world for about six and a half years. Got burned out on it. In truth, I think I am too much of a control freak to be an actor. I look at, everything very big picture. I'm more of a writer, I'm more of a producer, so it made sense to just pivot into the writing realm. Which then I was like, I want to launch my own TV show. So then, this is quite some time later. This was in 2016. So 10 years after moving to LA, I launched my own TV show, and I produced and hosted that for about 9 months, called Nadya's Identity Files.
No kidding. Where was it?
So I broadcast out of a little studio in Hollywood, but it was for online. It was for a platform called WCOBM. But we also put the episodes out on YouTube. It was a lot of work because I did an episode every single week.
Wow.
Every episode was an hour long. Typically my format was 2 guests per episode, and they would all correspond to one theme. So I would interview one at a time, and then at the end we would round table the subject and the theme. Oh. So then the 2 guests would get to interact with one another.
And how long did you do this for?
9 months.
Wow.
So
that's exhausting right there.
It was a lot of work. Finding the guests, getting them into the studio. As it grew, I had a couple people's PR folks reach out to get them on the show, and then they were extra, of course, because it's
Right.
LA. So that was interesting.
Right. And then so because because people with hair color like mine uh are not necessarily immersed in that world. Why was that an easier pivot to what you're doing now? How did like what's the link there?
The link between marketing and PR and like acting, or like how did
Well,
it all happen? How
the
did that?
link between what you were doing, so you're doing journalism and this TV show, and then you said, and so it wasn't as big a step to what you're doing now, and I don't get it.
No, I didn't say quite that. So, when I was transitioning out of the acting and modeling world, I started doing freelance journalism back in like 2012.
Right.
So at that time, I had a couple of interviewees, both of whom had wellness businesses, and both asked if I could, they knew each other, if I could help them with their social media because they, as you just noted, they were quite a bit older than me. And they just didn't understand how to navigate social media. And at that time, it wasn't really a thing like it is today. It wasn't, social media marketing, so PR, online PR, all of these different things. It hadn't blown up to the level that it has now in 2022. So I was just open to helping them out. I wasn't really thinking much of
Ah,
it. And so the activities that I did, which mostly were leveraging storytelling, their stories, the story of the business, and cutting them up into short tweets and engaging with other people that I thought could be their prospective customer,
mhm.
ended up converting into more sales for them and growth. And I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. So I started building up at that time, moving forward, my roster of freelance social media clients, but very not too aggressively until I would say 2016 is when I started doing that in tandem with spearheading that TV show. I was
Mhm.
also working full time in a law office during all of this and going to school part time.
Because you had so much time. Did you ever
Right, because I
sleep?
just had so much time.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
found time to sleep, but long days for sure.
Yeah. And so that's grown enormously, right? But both for you, but also the territory, right? I mean, it's been, I mean, now it's hard to imagine businesses succeeding who are not in some way engaging in this digital world to
Right. It's
promote themselves.
fascinating. And I like to look at it from, more of that academic viewpoint as well. Like I definitely want to dive into some research, tracking the growth and tracking, how people have changed and how they present themselves in person versus online and vice versa and in relationship to one another. Just the whole concept of digital identity as a whole is fascinating to me. But definitely the agency grew quite fast, mostly attributing the growth to a service I launched at the end of 2017, which was focused on Instagram specifically. It was Instagram growth oriented. And I launched that service on an online marketplace, not thinking it would take off the way it did, but it grew quite quickly. And so I was able to expand into other services like everything that we're doing today. So at that time in 2017, I had one virtual assistant, and now, we have a team of over 20 people
Oh well.
at the agency spanning from all over the globe, and we've served now over 600 customers since
And
2020.
and is everybody remote? I mean,
Everybody's remote. We've always been
everybody's remote.
remote. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Except my
Um,
wife, we live together, we work together. So, you know,
yeah. So you started it with your wife or no?
so I started the company on my own, and then, that's a whole another situation. And then she, naturally came in. We've worked together in the past at other companies. So, she also is very creative, very talented. Her background is more in photography, but also writing. So it was made sense to kind of move her into the agency. And so now she is the co-founder and lead marketing and brand strategist.
And well, you said you're an open book. So you can shut the pages anytime I ask a question. So so is it hard to work together?
Um,
Is it a
you know,
challenge?
it's not that challenging. We work quite well together. I think we bounce a lot of ideas off one another. So, we work really well together. We're generally on the same page. We're actually working with another couple out here in Las Vegas who they have built their business together. They just got married. We went to their wedding
Oh well.
last weekend. And so, it's been interesting kind of hearing from them about their challenges versus our challenges and all of that because, of course there's going to be challenges sometimes, but it's mostly around knowing when to turn off the business.
That was what I was going to ask is like, do you get to turn it off? Because, you know,
Not ever completely, but we do like if we're going out and we're relaxing somewhere, like I try, like let's try not to talk about business. Let's not pay attention to those notifications. Like I usually put my autoresponder on every weekend, even if, of course, behind the scenes I might work one whole weekend day, but I don't need everyone else to know that. Like it's
right.
just a way, if anything, it's a boundary I set for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Super important. Speaking of that conversation I had with the work stress
Oh yeah,
expert. Yeah, really.
I
Um,
bet.
so that's interesting. So, and do you have to do a lot of, again, this may be a gray-haired question, so I apologize, but do you have to do a lot of like keeping up with new things? I mean, like, so suddenly, you know, Snapchat and TikTok started. TikTok, I get it. Okay. That's not a boomer mistake. That's a tongue-tied mistake. Um, uh,
I remember that forever, just so you know.
so, so do you have to like constantly sort of, because there's enough similarity, I guess, and at the same time there's not. So are you always having to, the latest platform that is exploding, do you have to somehow
Yeah,
keep
we
up with
always want to have a pulse on, what's new and trending, but also be aware, based off our own expertise and experience of what would likely fizzle out. Like with Clubhouse, for example, I mean, that was popping for, a big part
like
of last
20
year.
minutes, right? Yeah.
It seemed that way,
Yeah.
but I would say at least like February 2021 through the summer, it was pretty active. But then, of course, as more just life started to get a little closer to normal once again,
Mhm.
people wanted to go out and about and engage face to face versus be in this virtual environment. But then, of course, you have to ask, well, they're still engaging virtually at the same level as they always have pre-pandemic on other socials like Instagram and Facebook. And I like to say, I think that's because those socials have a number of other features beyond just direct chat, which of course, as it started to fizzle out, Clubhouse then started to integrate a lot of other features. I do think it should be treated now more so as a tool than something that's going to keep growing. But I think, just like
Mhm.
with that, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to drop all these other socials and put every client just on Clubhouse because it's so popular. You have to be aware that that might just be a passing trend.
So you started out, you left home, well, 19, you went to LA, make the,
I actually
enter
left
enter that
earlier
world.
than that, but I didn't. So I left at 18 and then it didn't work out because I didn't have a lot of money. So Lauren, my co-founder slash wife, we met online when I was in high school and she
Oh
lived in
well.
California and I lived in Maryland. So for my high school graduation present, which I skipped senior year, I did not do senior year. I graduated high school at 11th grade, took all the APs, was able to get it done. So I was like, please, parents, for graduation present, let me fly to California to meet Lauren. And so they're like, but they let me. And so I did. And, we entered into a relationship, which was long distance. And then I was like, I really want to pursue my modeling stuff. I had the opportunity to get a $100,000 modeling contract in New York, but didn't quite meet the height standards. I'm 5'7", and they were like, well, you're a little too short for us, but we thought we could have a conversation. I'm just like, oh God. So I was like, well, I want to do more acting stuff anyway. So long story short, I worked a crappy job in Maryland to save some funds to move to California. So after a year of long distance, I moved to California at 18. We were living in the Inland Empire initially, and that, out near her parents, and that didn't really work out for various crazy reasons. We ended up homeless for like 2 weeks and had to go back on a train cross country from LA back to Maryland. Lived there for 9 months, worked 2 jobs, submitted to a bunch of agencies, got the
Mm.
contract, had savings, so moved back officially in 2006 when I was 19. So,
But so you bypassed the usual track then, right? You
yeah.
didn't go to college right out of high school. Did
Yeah.
you? So you said you mentioned that you did at some point. You were going to school while you were also working, et cetera, et cetera. What did you study?
So I started going back to school, started the process of going back to school in 2013, even though I knew it probably wasn't necessary. Both of my parents are professors. So I grew up in a very academic environment. I had a lot of academic rigor as a teenager. I was accepted to NYU, but for various circumstances, wasn't able to go there. So that was also what propelled me to say, screw this town and screw Maryland. I'm going to go to California and do my own
Yeah.
thing. I can't go where I want to go. So,
So
so I went back to
why did you?
school
Oh yeah,
in
sorry.
2014. Um,
Why? Why'd
2013,
you do that?
well, probably just because of wanting to check all the boxes and feeling like,
Yeah,
why not?
yeah.
I want to be stimulated. So I decided to go back mostly for that purpose. And so started in community college at SMC, Santa Monica College. And then
Yeah.
you get those more, those rote credits out of the way. Then I transitioned to Antioch University,
Oh
LA,
sure.
where I
Yeah.
was studying social and what was I studying? Social entrepreneurship and also creative writing, but the business grew so fast. So I had to step away. So I have not finished technically my degree, but I will go back and probably just I have 3 independent learnings with syllabi I've created that I would like to finish and then utilize that material for one of the books that I'll be
So
working
I guess what I'm asking because I've spoken to several entrepreneurs, and which is an interesting. You sound like you actually are. People call themselves entrepreneurs when they've started one thing, and I
on.
always wondered about that. It's like, well, what? Why didn't you just? Didn't you just start a business? Does that make you an entrepreneur?
Right.
But but you. It seems like you, unless I've got the story wrong, you're doing something that you learned on the job, as it were, right? You learned
Yes, I never
in the
went to
doing.
school. I mean, I was already working on the business when I went to Antioch to choose that track. So, and I
And
remember distinctly my advisor saying, you should set aside the business to focus on school, even though I had a 4.0. So it made no sense to even say that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I have to focus on the business and I can go to school at the same time. But then the growth got so rapid
yeah.
by like the end of 2017, early 2018 that I was, maybe only 10, 15 credits away from finishing, but I just did not have the bandwidth. So I'm like, I
Did
will get
you
back to this.
do you feel like or do you know of programs where the studying of where the program uh, either helped you or would help you in the stuff that you're doing? Or is what you're doing something where really it's about learning by doing?
Right. Yeah. Nothing, I don't think really much at Antioch contributed to my growth, with the exception of perhaps, building confidence, just because oftentimes I was in learning environments where the professors themselves, they didn't always even have all the answers. And then because I was so proactive, I almost ended up co-teaching some of my classes with some of these people without getting the pay. But not that it would be much academia, but yeah. So
Uh, that's that's bold. So how did this little girl from Maryland get so bold to like, well, I'm going to start this and I'm going to start that and I'm going to start a TV show, and then I'm like, where did that come from? Do you have any
I don't
insight
know.
into
I
that?
was very shy as a child. I was extremely introverted. I got very nervous when I was called on in school, even though I wanted to talk about what I knew because I knew I had the right answer. But I would oftentimes be very shy, except when I was in character. So that's part of why I think I was
Mm.
driven to acting, because I was able to step outside of myself and become this other person. And I think, we do that all the time to a degree, depending on the context. But then again,
Sure.
I tend to think that, who I am is who I am. Like, I don't really modify my
So,
personality between various environments.
so do you have any insight into like, oh, how come all of a sudden you were bold enough to do this thing, to sort of walk
Yeah.
into this world that, well, you can tell me about that world, but from everything, well, maybe it's not true. I was about to say from the various places I've bumped into, uh, it's a PR marketing. It's not that there are not women in the field, but at least it was a really male heavy enterprise. And here you are, you're going to start this thing, and you're bold enough to do that. So you have any clues about where that came from, or
No, I think it
we're
was
just
just,
stubborn?
I don't know. I certainly haven't really like thought about that or reflected on it. I just
Yeah.
think it's like, just like with any, if you want to achieve something, you have to get out there and do it. Like, it's not going to just come to you magically. I haven't really had much, I have been financially independent since I was 18 years old. So it's like when you are independent and, navigating the world, let alone a city, like a county of almost over 10 million people after being in a town of 40,000
Mm.
and navigating a bunch of stuff and a bunch of BS for so many years and growing and thriving in different environments, it's going to just come more naturally. And that confidence is going to be built. And I think, seeing the impact that I have on companies, on like the social sector, when I work with nonprofits, I mean, that certainly galvanizes me to keep going.
Um, do you want to say more about the business itself? About like more of your clients nonprofits or more of your clients for profit? I like the. I mean, I'd like to hear more about the. I guess I guess I kind of knew that, but that partnership thing where you
A
somehow,
purposeful partnership.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds super interesting.
Yeah, I really love our purposeful partnership offering. Right now, it lives beneath our PR umbrella. So any client that's coming in for PR services, we naturally will push them into getting a purposeful partnership underway. Whether that will be short term or long term, that of course is dependent on the client's goals, on the goals of the organizations. But I always look for alignment and synergy. For example, we supported a fashion app last year focused on sustainability in fashion specifically. So the whole concept is to go into your closet and look at what you have before going out and making like rash buying decisions. And then, of course, being strategic about what you are purchasing, trying to avoid fast fashion and whatnot. So for that client, we were like, okay, we need to have a really cool, purposeful partnership. So I found a youth led nonprofit out of Vancouver focused on sustainability and fashion and uplifting people of color in fashion, particularly young women. So I was like, purposeful partnership, there we go. So around Black, we did a campaign called Stitch by Stitch that took place during Black Friday last year to encourage people about, being more sustainable during Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
And what did each of, like in this particular example, but generally, what do each of the organizations, for lack of a better way of saying it, get from it? Like what's the incentive to, hey, yeah, we'd like to do that. I'm a for-profit company,
Right,
really I'm worried about my bottom. I'm always worried of thinking in
right.
terms of my bottom line. What's the benefit? Why do I do
Yeah,
that?
the motivations are, obviously going to be a bit different from on the nonprofit side versus the for-profit side, although
Oh,
there's going to be shared motivations as well, which typically the shared motivation is exposure. But for profits, particularly for bigger companies that claim to be mission driven or, want to position themselves as being, you know, oriented towards some type of purpose, it's a way to further substantiate that and to show that they're not just virtue signaling with this language and, really moving forward with something that could make a difference. And oftentimes, the nonprofit is not coming out of pocket for these campaigns. They're gaining a lot of exposure without having to pay anything because the for profit is paying
is
for the
paying.
support. and also for the influencers and all the things, and where the nonprofit is going to, potentially gain funds in the door because from new donors, new exposure. But if it's a large nonprofit and say the business is, up and coming, maybe it's a mid-sized company, then that mid-sized company who's still fronting the cost is also in turn borrowing from that nonprofit's audience if it's
Mhm.
aligned. That's why it's really important when we're facilitating purposeful partnerships that there's synergy. Like we have facilitated a long-term partnership with a nephrologist out of South Carolina who has a multimedia cooking platform called the Cooking Doc and the American Kidney Fund. And so, that obviously is super aligned. I don't think it gets much more aligned than that.
And who does the research to find these things? Like
So
some,
I have had to, I mean, I've developed this whole approach from scratch. But then I have my PR and influencer outreach coordinator, shout out Dan Lee, to handle all of the outreach for these partnerships. Now, my plan with this is to move Purposeful Partnership into a standalone service. And so it's not necessarily living under PR umbrella or being mixed in with other services, but it's more so just something that especially bigger companies would want to invest into.
a
And then,
standalone service, not a standalone company. You want it's
right, not
still,
a
yeah,
standalone company,
yeah,
although, you're on the right track
yeah.
because beyond the standalone service that would still be beneath the A&M umbrella, I do want to build Purposeful Partnership into like software as a service to scale it up even further, which of course would be a little less attention on either side. Everything would be automated for companies and nonprofits to co-build their campaigns.
Mhm. That's interesting.
So
Wow. And yeah, and have the responses been the responses? Are there any that are really worth pointing out? I mean, other than the nephrologist, which is the perfect company.
yeah, so that went really well. Definitely the threading change and open wardrobe, that partnership, the Black Friday partnership went
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Our first purposeful partnership that we did was with the Chill Foundation, which is a nonprofit established by the Burton Company founders to empower youth through board sports. So underserved youth are empowered through these various board sport activities depending on their geography. If it's greater New York City area, it would be snowboarding mostly. If it's greater LA, it's going to be mostly surfing or skateboarding,
Mm,
depending on where, the location is. So we
yeah,
were working with a hip hop artist, a young lady who also is an avid snowboarder. And obviously, like she didn't really understand the best way to amplify that part of her brand because so much emphasis was on her music, but she really is a passionate snowboarder. So this was back in 2018. So I was like, this is kind of how Purposeful Partnership was born. I said, why don't we find a nonprofit to make you like an ambassador for that is all about helping doing something with snowboarding. So I found the Chill Foundation and partnered her up with them. She was their first ever ambassador. So this partnership spearheaded a whole ambassador program. And to date, she's now become an ambassador for Burton itself because of her success in helping and
wow,
empowering
that's
Chill
great.
Foundation, getting a bunch of kids in her music video, helping raise a lot of money for the organization. And in turn, of course, that helped her brand grow
Sure.
her authority. And now she's working with Burton, and she did like a concert at like, I guess, some big sports event with Burton last year.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds great. I mean, really, that sounds great. So is that a is that a feature of of alter new media that you pour a lot of energy into? Is it like
I
is
want
that
to pour more energy into it. I mean,
yeah,
like I said, so whenever any client gets PR, like we're always going, that's part of the protocol to look out for a purposeful partnership. So that's part of the requirement
mhm,
for the team always, because it's going to be great for PR. It's like everyone wants PR, but no one wants to do anything newsworthy. So it's like if you want to get press, do something newsworthy, do something compelling and worthy of
yeah,
getting news. Like you don't just get to be in Forbes just for breathing. Sorry.
right,
So,
right, yeah. What a good
but
idea.
yeah,
It's a good idea with a with a really positive payoff. Not
exactly.
not just financial, but in the world. That's great. Good for you.
Thank
Good for
you.
you. How long have you been doing that for? Since when? 2018?
So yeah, so that's when Purposeful Partnership was born, but I really want to take it to the next level. So that's a
Yeah.
priority for this year.
Yeah. That's great. Wow. Can we pivot just a little bit?
Yeah,
Uh,
pivot
uh,
away.
So, and again, you just slap me or something if I'm asking the wrong question. Or, so you are proudly and outspokenly, that I know of, a member of the LBL, you know, LB
I guess LGBTQI is fine.
LGBTQ,
Yes.
right, community. And have you run into any issues about that in the business world?
Not at all. And so, Lauren and I are both technically bisexual. We're married. We don't, obviously we're both out, but I mean, I don't like every single call, like, guess what, guys? Like, just so you know, like, here's my flag or something. It's just like anyone. I think part of the issue is that people make it such a thing instead of just being yourself. And I've, been out as bi since I was 12 years old.
Since you were 12?
Since I was
Wow.
12. Yeah.
Wow.
And
That's
it's just for
practice.
me, it's just who I am. Like I understand everyone's journey is different and how, people, have various levels of comfortability about it, both in and out of the community. But for me, it's just natural and it's not really something, I mean, I'll just let it right off my tongue, be like, yeah, my co-founder, if it's necessary, be like, she's also my wife, or, we're partners in love and life. And no one really blinks an
No
eye.
one
It doesn't
blinks.
matter if I'm talking to some guy or like, older white guy in the South, it just doesn't make it, it doesn't matter. No one
Isn't that
really
great?
cares.
It's so good. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, yeah. I was wondering because I think maybe it's changed so much. Not that piece, but the PR marketing business that I thought, oh God, do you have to on top of everything else deal with that? And
No,
no, that's great.
thank goodness. Never been an issue.
And
Uh,
what about being a woman as the CEO of a company? Nobody blinks. Well, yeah, I
No.
mean, you obviously come over as competent right away.
Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah, well, I think that's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, honestly, like I've had more issues and more tension with other women than I have with men. I tend to gel pretty well with men in business. I think I'm very direct and very straightforward, not to say that women are not. I'm not trying to push forth any stereotypes, but I just have no patience for anything passive aggressive
yeah.
or like overtly emotional. I just rather get the work done.
I'm chuckling for reasons that you and I know.
Oh yeah. Yes, that could be a
Yeah.
whole episode in of itself, and they would not even notice. So
Oh God.
they would be like, "Huh?"
Yeah, yeah. What's on the frontier on the to-do list for all, well, either for Alter New Media or for Nadia Russo, that that gets you up in the morning
Yes.
eagerly.
Well, there's so much that I want to achieve, and right now we're in this like stage of growth, which has been exciting, but obviously a little challenging because growth isn't cheap, and there's a lot of things that we have to keep up with operationally. Once your team gets to a certain size, you have to start like really looking at your operating procedures.
Are those 20 or 20 plus people, when you say they're on the team, are these people that are on the payroll all the time?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
I would say maybe three or four of them are interns. So I guess 16 are on
Yeah. Yeah.
being paid all the time. Yeah.
But even managing interns is no small thing. So,
It's
so
no small thing.
yeah,
And it's just like, I've been working now with a leadership coach. I've been working with like a business consultant as we're
yeah,
starting to really streamline things. We have a fractional CFO who comes in and helps out. But, obviously so much of the operational headaches falls in my lap. Team drama, different little things. So these are the types of things that now I feel like I've had to catch up with really fast
yeah.
in terms of my own learning and making adjustments and whatnot and growing in my own leadership. So while I really want to focus on like all of the big exciting like projects, I have to make sure that we're fully streamlined on operations before I can go too hard with those things.
And
But
is there a way for you to, I mean, do you have a designated COO or no?
so don't have a COO right now. No, we do have a project manager. I have an executive assistant. But we're
No,
definitely looking at bringing in someone maybe fractionally. But again, I think for
sure.
now, like having that consultant
Right.
working with us on streamlining the operations is probably going to be fine enough. So as we're doing that, though, of course, I'm doing different things and prepping like for various programs that we're going to be launching. Like obviously I want to move purposeful partnership into that standalone service, like I mentioned. So working on a plan for that. Working on a plan to spearhead an online school, which would be living underneath the alternate media umbrella called Purposeful Marketers. And Purposeful Marketers, all of the people that join will also get to become affiliates for alternate media. So that's kind of, it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to build that out. So the plan is to work on our company handbook and build that out in tandem because a lot of the protocols I need to update require setting up like learning material. So a lot of that material can be repurposed for the school.
Where do these ideas come from?
My brain,
You just wake up in the morning and like, I gotta,
I don't always set aside like dedicated time to reflect as much as I should. They definitely do come about somewhat spontaneously. I own about 25 domains for different things that I want to do or other ways like on an SEO front to like, grow the company. Like I think I have Las Vegas smallbusiness.com. I think I have New York smallbusiness.com. So there's a lot of different strategies I want to deploy.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that you do turn it off enough.
I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
Are there like conferences, networking things that that are established in your field that you like sort of you have to,
Um,
if you're going to participate, you really ought to be there?
Definitely there's a lot. I mean, I got like my whole convention game got thrown off because of the pandemic. I mean, I live in the convention capital in the world
Yeah.
here in Las Vegas, so I definitely want to start going to more. Last fall, I was a judge at the White Label Expo, so I got to be there as a judge to judge one of the
What is the White Label Expo?
it
What is
was
that?
all about basically very B2B oriented. So companies who are looking for other companies to basically render services on their behalf from the back end as
Mhm.
though they are not existing. So rather than hire people in house, you can't always choose to work in strategic partnership and have someone white label for you, which we've done a lot of white labeling for companies, especially emerging agencies that don't have the bandwidth to execute.
Where do you get your clients? How do you get them? How does
So
it
most of
ultimately?
them, I would say like 90% of them have come through my presence on Fiverr Pro, which is the premium leg of the Fiverr marketplace. Fiverr is an online platform for freelancers to, broadcast all about their services. They can create very like bespoke services on the platform. And that's where I launched my Instagram growth service. I was approved for Pro, which Fiverr has a reputation of being only able to sell for very low amounts, which was why I never would be on there as a seller until I learned about the Pro program. And when I learned about Pro, I'm like, okay, I'll apply. And I got approved. So I was able to set, premium pricing for my services. So many people find me on there. I'm a top rated seller on Fiverr, out of thousands of service providers worldwide. So that has, certainly been a huge driver in our growth because a lot of people will get a full marketing strategy and then they'll decide to come back for multiple services. Now, not just Fiverr, of course, as my own influence and the company's influence has grown, people have learned about alternate media or me. So then they will come to me or I'll get referrals. But now we're ready to ramp stuff up and start doing more paid advertising and lead gen and marketing. So gonna start investing it.
You made references several times to various services. So can you rattle them off? Can you like what services does Alt New Media provide?
So we are technically a full service marketing and PR agency, which means that we can be your one-stop shop for, all things marketing. So everything from brand and marketing strategy development to social media marketing to SEO to web to inbound email marketing, influencer marketing, PR. Definitely our preferred services to offer are influencer marketing, PR, and strategy dev, as well as long form content. And we also do digital production. So this is why I was in Boston and New York for 10 days. I got back on Friday, so it was really great to be on the East Coast again for quite some time. We were working with one of our influencers. And so when I say our influencers, what I mean is that we have an in-house influencer talent division. So just like a lot of talent management companies used to operate, traditional ones, right, with actors or commercial actors, theatrical, whatever else. Now, talent companies are propping up and repping influencers. So people who are considered thought leaders or influential or have a great brand presence online, they are now getting and seeking representation. So I have spearheaded a leg of the agency, which is our influencer talent division. And so we have about 10 people on our roster right now. And one of them is a young lady who happens to have Down syndrome and has overcome all the odds, all the challenges, and has grown her cookie company, Coletti's Cookies, to
I've
national
definitely
brand.
seen that.
Yeah,
I've
she's
definitely seen that.
amazing. She just got in People magazine. We have a call with NBC next week. She's been on News Nation, Fox and Friends. We did a big commercial shoot with Dell early in 2022, which got her SAG eligible. Super exciting. So she had a TV show on Peacock, which is great, called Born for Business. Check it out, everyone. But now we are spearheading a web series called Underestimated. And so we're producing this web series. It'll be on IMDb soon. And it's all about her journey as an entrepreneur and all the behind the scenes stuff. And so we're in Boston and New York filming for 10 days with her.
Okay, wait. So did you seek her out? Did you seek
She
her out
came
as
to me.
potential? How does that work? How'd that
She
work?
came to me. She actually
She
came to
came to
me
you.
for pro bono support last year, which I don't normally do, but her mission was so amazing and tear jerking. And I really connected with her right away, and her mother, both of whom have also become very dear friends. So I said, absolutely, I will help you. Like, I want to help you, whatever you need. And as she grew, we just started helping her pro bono with social media and some other things, consulting. I'm on her advisory board. I said, you know what, let's put you on our influencer division and start booking you more brand collaborations. And as part of her being on the influencer board, what I wanted to do, along with our lead video producer and Lauren, my co-founder, we were all like, let's produce a web series for her, because we've done a lot of YouTube editing for other clients. So we wanted to take it to the next level. So we filmed basically enough content for 3 episodes between Boston and New York. And we also helped her but she didn't honestly need that much help at all. Like, she definitely, hence the title Underestimated. We all, successful people, we underestimate ourselves
Hmm.
all the time. And she killed it at this meeting with a New York food broker to, take her retail, basically.
That's exciting.
So
That's
it was
really
really
great.
exciting. And then I also had an
So
Alternate
good.
Media sponsored dinner in New York last Wednesday. And that was a lot of fun. So we had other influencers that we represent, including one that I just brought on the board that you might recognize. He was someone that did an IG live for a certain person, she who shall not be named, and he killed it. And he reached back out asking, hey, can we work together again? And I'm like, well, let me take a look at everything you're doing and your goals. And I said, yeah, we'll bring you on the influencer board.
So this influencer board, do you seek people out who are already influencers, or do you seek
Typically,
out potential so that because you have a hunch that they might become an influencer?
Typically I look for people that already have a presence and authority, but I'm more concerned about like actual authority and actual talent
Hmm.
than huge numbers. Like I would rather someone have 10,000 followers and be like extremely talented in a specific thing because I think they have the potential to blow up and be, very unique to brands versus someone who just has like 500,000 followers, of which many might not even be super authentic and are just doing duck lip selfies all day. So,
Hmm.
like I want people that are truly influential, really committed to making a difference with their work and their platforms. So, I'm very careful with making sure people are
Yeah,
impact oriented.
yeah, that's great. That's another one of those ideas you woke up with one morning.
I don't know how I think someone actually asked if I would help them like as an influencer. And I was thinking like, why don't I launch an influencer talent division and like mentor people in the way that I would have wanted to be mentored when I was an actor, but yet they were so like they didn't really know what they were doing. Half of these talent managers and agents, they just were like, okay, here's breakdowns express and like let's just see what's there versus really taking the time to work with their talent, right?
Hmm.
So but yeah, I mean, definitely we want my goal, my vision for the agency is to move more firmly into the influencer, PR, and digital media side and moving away from, what I view as more extraneous services like those like more traditional digital marketing services like the PPC and the web and stuff. I don't, I would rather move more full throttle into these other things or at least make them even a greater emphasis of the agency.
Yeah. And is that just about energy and effort in a particular direction, or is it going to require ramping up in ways that are that you're
I think
not.
it's really gonna have to do more with, like, adjusting the positioning ever so slightly. I mean, we already identify as being purpose forward and all of those good things, but, just really focusing on, orienting our content, our marketing, and our efforts towards those services and, really putting a spotlight on what we're doing with influencers and in the space because it's definitely our secret sauce. It's more unique than just, being like, "Hey, like, we're have all these things," but then again, it's like we can have all of these things, but not make that the emphasis, and then slowly kind of let those fade to the background.
Hmm.
My approach.
Hmm. Um, you want to talk about a mistake you've made?
Oh, I always make mistakes. I think the biggest mistakes have been around hiring snafus, like
Sorry.
trusting people too much, or I'm someone that really looks at folks' potential, perhaps to a fault. And at least my coaches have told me this, like really want to see the best in everybody. You see like how you can like take them to the next level, probably because I never really had cheerleaders like that or mentors like that, growing up or into my early adulthood. So I'm like, let me give them that support. And sometimes they just are not there. They don't have that ambition. And it's just like I keep fighting
Yeah.
against that with certain people where I have seen a pattern and like trying to do this again and again, seeing someone as a potential, then getting disappointed that their ambition is not matching up with what they've claimed it to be. So I've had to establish better practices for vetting people out and also just getting comfortable with the fact that not, we're in a time right now, especially of the great resignation, and there's going to be turnover no matter what you do, no matter how much you try to foster a positive work environment, like there's going to be turnover.
Well, that's for sure. But there's also that other piece. This is on my mind really because of of some other company that I am involved with that you know the person in charge sees the best,
Mhm.
and and when somebody does something that is obviously not the best, the
Right.
um you know it's sometimes people hang on too long. Sometimes people hang on because it's hard to fire somebody. You want to
Yeah.
give somebody a chance. You want to make sure that you want to move somebody along. And
Right. You wanna move them, take them along the journey.
yeah,
See?
and yeah, yeah, and that's hard sometimes, right? Especially especially when you're in such a fast moving territory and you move fast and you clearly have goals and you clearly have ideas and you work towards them, and the personnel stuff is hard because
That's hard.
nobody bats 1,000%. You make mistakes or you
Right.
misjudge or you discover something that was not discoverable at first, but there it is. And yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
But
it's
yeah, hiring and navigating that and getting better at that and knowing like, when's enough to interview, like have you interviewed enough people? Have you interviewed not enough people? Like all those
yeah,
things. Like
yeah,
definitely I've made a lot of mistakes along the way with that, but I think, getting much better now.
yeah. um what else do you want to talk about?
I'm an open book, Mr. Curiosity.
How important is it that you share values with the companies you work with, or can you set
Um,
those? Obviously, it's
I think
you're
it
not working with
depends.
Attila the Hun, right? You're not working with the Nazi
Right.
party, but
Right. Oh my God. Yeah, as a Jewish woman, that would probably be pretty messed up.
yeah, it'd be a challenge for them as well.
Yeah, I think so. Although you never know. I've seen some weird stuff online these days. I'm like, dang, what is going on with the
Yeah,
world? I
yeah,
mean, I definitely, we're mission driven, but in my view, like you can be mission driven and cause based without being political. In fact, I encourage political neutrality around being cause based. Like, let's focus on an issue, let's focus on the cause, let's not politicize that, let's focus on making a difference. I think politics has, caused so many problems, especially in this country. Everything is so black and white when most issues are living in the gray zone.
absolutely. I think actually you're right about my experience when you focus on cause and values. Now, obviously, this is not always the case, but when you focus on cause and values, you find so many things in common with people who, at first blush, really, you would not think, oh yeah, sure, we're simpatico. But in fact, really, you do want some of the same things. And
Exactly.
so, yeah,
Yeah, I'm pretty open-minded. I mean, obviously, if something was like very clearly like hate oriented
yeah,
or doing
right,
something like messed up towards any one group, then that would be a no-go by
yeah.
default.
Hey, did you ever when you look back at your previous self, whatever that means, yeah, any idea you were heading in this direction, in the direction you're heading in? Are you surprised that you are doing what you're doing?
I'm a little surprised. I mean, definitely, of course, when we're young, we think we have everything figured out. We think we know what our track will be forever. But certainly like when I was like 19, 20, like I thought I would be in the entertainment industry or in the creative arts exclusively forever. Now there's definitely, I also love to write creative fiction. So that part of me has not been like stimulated nearly enough. So I hope to get back to that stuff soon, as well as, script writing and stuff like that. So I can feed that creative
But
side.
it doesn't sound like there's any shortage of creativity in what
Yeah,
space for creativity in what you're doing. You're
definitely.
building a unique. I mean, maybe
Yes.
maybe
I
I
think
just don't know, but
you're right for sure. Definitely like create I have to be creative all the time, but I also have to be very practical and very logical. Not that there's no logic in the creative realm whatsoever, but I do have to go back and forth between really focusing on like KPIs and stuff like that, and then focusing on like being creative. So sometimes that can be a little bit challenging, but I never would have known that I would be an entrepreneur, growing a business like at this pace. And I'm definitely happy to be doing what I'm doing. And I think, I'm just glad that I'm doing what I'm doing.
and I'll put in a plug. Having had the experience of working with you, where you were the business that was hired to
Mhm.
promote an entity. It was great. That part was a pleasure, and you know it was both a pleasure because the ideas were great, and it was a pleasure because there were there were no promises that were not met, right? It's
Right,
like,
right. And
well,
of
we can,
course, navigating the challenges, like, of
sure,
people not
right.
always understanding process, generational divides and all of
Well,
those.
what do you do about that, right? I mean, you must run into that, right? It
Oh,
couldn't be that, right? You must. There's like, the world that you're, the world that you're working in is just not a world that so many people who are still working, it's not what they think about. It's not what they think.
no.
They don't know the territory. They can't imagine why it's like, what I'm going to do this and what am I getting for it? And
Yes.
so,
Definitely older people oftentimes, although not always, sometimes we've gotten, I mean, I have met younger people, like decade younger than I am, who don't understand social media because they choose not to understand it. But of course, that is a rare thing. My personal trainer, shout out Bree Rao. She would be very happy to say that she doesn't like social media. She doesn't have time for it. She doesn't understand it. She's like in her early 20s. She's the younger sister of one of my like best friends from high school. And now she's training me to be in shape, like keeping me in shape. But she doesn't like social media. So I've been giving her advice. So it does come in different generations. Obviously, it's more traditionally like boomer old and older who have the most disconnect, but I've run into plenty of X gens as well. Not so much, I mean, some other millennials, like I'm a millennial, but I think most X gens now are like starting to adapt and get into it, but a lot of boomers are like, just handle it for me. But then
uh,
some get frustrated, of
uh,
course, that they don't always understand what's happening. Sometimes the expectations for like results are much higher just because they might be somewhat anxious about online marketing and like
mhm,
the results and outcomes. That's why having clear upfront communication is really important. We don't work without a strategy. If we're working in a multi-service capacity, we will not work or move forward without first developing a strategy, which you probably recall that when we supported a certain entity, we were very like firm about first moving forward with that strategy before doing anything else.
yeah. Sometimes I think it's, sometimes I think it's the terminology. Really, it is the idea of calling it. It's not that it's incorrect. Social media,
Mhm.
right? It's people, especially older people, especially for whom it's a relatively new thing. They think of social media as chatting with my friends on Facebook,
Mhm.
or showing family pictures on Instagram.
Right.
And so, you know it conjures up those kinds of images rather than,
Business.
you are building you are getting eyeballs, right? I mean, the thing that television did or radio did or whatever is like, this is this is where it's happening now. It's
Right.
not, it's not, it's certainly social, but it's not social, right, in that
Right.
way.
Not exclusively, no. I mean, that's why, I'm always like brand, obviously, and engagement. You need to have that
Yes,
engagement too, because no one's going to be social with you as a company unless you're
right,
reaching out to people to bring them into your orbit.
right.
Like that's important.
Yeah, you could have the best product in the world, and if nobody knows about it, good
Right.
for you.
And they're like, oh,
You
it's
got a lot of really great wallets. Great, great.
right, exactly. It's like you gotta reach out to people, and you can do that through like direct engagement. You can do that through paid ads. You can do that, obviously your content in and of itself can bring people into your orbit, but it shouldn't be like I never say like put all your eggs in one basket. Like you always should have a really solid multi-channel mix.
Do you does do you, which is to say your company, uh, do you help people with the non-digital world as well? Like, is some of what it is part of your campaigns, depending upon whatever the product is, in a more conventional or sort of more old school marketing and branding and those things, or no?
Well, we definitely work with in-person like events and brick and mortars. So, like for example, we supported an artist in March with driving traffic to his concert at the Troubadour. in LA, and he had to
Right.
get, so many people in there. I actually traveled to LA for that event. And so, that was a lot of heavy outreach. Granted, that outreach was primarily online, but it was for the purpose of getting people to an in-person event. We
Right.
will, work and collaborate and help spearhead like in-person events as it makes sense. But in terms of like direct mail, stuff like that, like the more traditional, like,
Yeah.
postcard marketing.
A
we
billboard.
Right. Well, we do have access to digital billboards and being able to set up digital billboards with, a lot in New York. We have a lot of access to setting them up there.
Hmm.
But it just really depends on the client's budget and goals. Like I will be very transparent with them and be like, if you want fast conversions, don't waste your money on billboards. Like you're probably not going to get it. Now, if you have a big budget and you're really concerned about brand, then go for it. Why
Right.
not?
Right. Right. Got it. Well, it's a pleasure.
It is a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure getting reacquainted and getting to know you a little more than we got to know each other then.
I know, right? This has been
Yeah.
a lot of fun. Was there any other closing questions that you'd like to ask?
Well, I kind of want to know I mean, I'm asking these questions of the various entrepreneurs that I've spoken to, who at the moment shall remain nameless, but a couple of them are fairly big names in the entrepreneur
That's
world.
awesome.
But what's a part of your job you love? What's a part of your job you really don't like? And a part of your job that you feel, if you're willing to say that, you feel like you're not as up to speed in it as you want to be.
Yeah, so good question. So definitely a part that I love is, working closely with really creative, pioneering people, both influencers, clients, and the team, as well as, developing new ideas and seeing them be carried out. Obviously that's very exciting, like what I'm doing with Purposeful Partnership and just seeing
Oh,
things like the impact, that the work has, like the positive impact, particularly like as I've been working with Colette and just how, we have been able to help her, the Pilates
unbelievable.
cookies, and
Beautiful.
just she's such a sweetheart. So that makes me really happy.
Yeah.
Negative, definitely. I don't like dealing with the tedious, like administrative, operational drama. I mean, I can be very organized and very strategic, but it's a time suck. And so I don't like doing that, even though it's a necessary evil. And I feel that I need to be a big part of that process, particularly, since I've grown the agency from the ground up. It's just tedious. And I probably am, overthinking it or projecting like negative vibes onto these things, but it's just not my favorite thing.
Some of them just suck.
Some of them just suck, and I'm just like, oh, like, I really hope people like actually follow these updated protocols. I'm not gonna have to explain it like 100 times. Obviously, I don't like having to let people go when that time arises. Like that's never fun, and just dealing with all of that mishigas. Not
Yes, indeed.
areas I don't think I'm fully up to speed in. Definitely like thank God I have like a fractional CFO and accountant. I feel like I'm pretty good with numbers. I'm not bad at math. But at the same time, I feel like I should get better at understanding the not like all of the ins and outs of like the profit and loss, like getting
Mhm.
even like more strong on like all the financials. Not that I'm like completely out of the loop, like clearly like I know like hey, like we're X percentage away from our sales goal this month, like you got to ramp it up, that type of thing. But I think I could brush up and get better with that.
And I have one more question, but uh, not but. Um, so somebody sees you, here's what you're doing, here's what you're doing, gets excited. It's like, hey, that sounds like not, I don't mean necessarily the business itself,
Yeah.
but but starting a company, running a company, doing my own thing, building something. What do you tell them
What do I tell them about?
about, like, got advice for them?
Like, oh, okay, so if they want to do what I'm doing,
Not necessarily the same business, but
but like
hey, I
starting
like the
any
idea
business.
of starting something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing is like do it. I don't know. Like, I mean, a lot of people ideate, and I've met a lot of people, particularly from LA, that ideate until the end of time. And I'm like, look, like, it's great to have ideas, but they're just going to remain ideas unless you go onto LegalZoom and create your business, like, establish your company. Like, before you do that, think about, what problem are you trying to solve? What's going to be your process? How are you going to grow it? Like in our case, I grew everything out of revenue. Didn't have an investor, didn't have a lot of ability to access loans. So that made it a lot harder, a lot more work because I had to sustain and grow the business completely out of the money we were bringing in. Now, since then, have been able to get, some more access to capital, not with investors, but with other means. But in the beginning, you have to understand, like, you're going to have to be prepared to do a lot of work, like 12-hour plus days every single day. And still now, some days I work over 12 hours, not every day, but some days I do. So just be prepared that, it's not like you're not going to get to like multiple seven figures just by breathing your idea. Like,
Right,
that's not how it
right,
works.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's that. I think that's one of those things that people, the language just doesn't do justice. When you say, you're going to start something, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but
It's a
I do
lot of,
want to note really quick that I
yeah.
am working on another business. It's not related to alternate media. I've been working on this for like a couple years, but obviously things have gotten busy. It's called Alpha to Alpha, and it is a women's business community, which will be global. And our goal is to partner with 4 women founded nonprofits a year to give back a percentage of the membership. So basically, this company will be all about, providing resources, community, tools, information to women already in business or who want to start a business. And the goal is to do 4 grants a year to emerging women businesses. So
Wow.
I already
For
have
grant.
a site. It's also, we have products as well. So like t-shirts, totes, mugs, all branded. So working on like that, finishing that's pretty much done. So that will probably launch in a couple months.
Really? This
Yeah.
is what you do in your spare time.
Gosh, that thing that was supposed to launch last year, and that was supposed to launch in Women's Month. And now I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm thinking
It
of
just
doing an
needs to
iFund.
launch.
I know it just needs to launch. It might do an iFund Women campaign, which is a crowdfunding platform oriented to women, not because we need like funds necessarily to move it forward, but because it's a great way to like kind of test the waters and get people interested and like pre-sale your memberships and other products and raise awareness.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
So
Good
I'll
for
keep you
you.
posted.
Yeah. And do me a favor. I can maybe edit this out because who needs to know? But send me. I know you didn't want to send me a bio. That's all.
Oh no,
Send
I
me
literally forgot. I swear.
send
I've
me
been
a brief bio, but also make sure you send any link you want in the YouTube video, so
oh, for sure. I'll
people can
send all
find
of
you and
that.
it, etc. Well,
Yeah.
Nadia, thank you so much for doing this. I
Yes,
appreciate
thank
it.
you for having
I
me. It
hope
was
you,
so much fun.
yeah, I had fun. It was fun catching up.